the last 10 years of trans youth organizing, you would think we'd be in a different place because of how much work we have put into demand respect for our bodies and respect for our lives and respect for our people. And I do think that our ability to still be here, the ever-growing numbers of young people who claim their queerness and transness, I am proud of that. I think that really is my goal in this work, just to continue the work of allowing young people to just be here, to just be young people wherever they call home. And right now, that's a really intense fight.
Greetings, y'all. My name is Jenna Brailsford. I'm the Deputy Director for Communities for Just Schools Fund. I'm super excited to be here talking to two of our inspirational movement partners from the CJSF network, advancing the holistic safety and governing power of trans, queer, and two-spirit young people, or TQ2S young people. Our first guest is Juniper Gia Loving. She's a queer, transgender Latina mother and community-rooted organizer living on unceded Ohlone territories in the Bay Area. Originally from El Monte, California, Tongvaland, Gia is an artist, student, Libra, and lover. She uses she, her pronouns. And GSA Network is a next-generation LGBTQ racial and gender justice organization that empowers and trains queer, trans, and allied youth leaders to advocate, organize, and mobilize an intersectional movement for safer schools and healthier communities. They work with a base of trans, queer, and two-spirit youth of color between the ages of 13 and 19 across the country. Welcome, Gia.
Hi there. Thank you for having us.
We'll also be talking to Tyrone Creech. Tyrone is a fifth-generation Madisonian whose mother comes from one of the oldest Black families in Madison and whose father came from Alabama. He grew up with 5 aunties, all of whom had a tremendous influence on him growing up. His family has always been committed to volunteering, nonprofit work, and giving back to the community. Since summer 2024, Tyrone has served as the executive director of GSAFE, a nonprofit organization striving to create socially just Wisconsin schools for LGBTQ students. GSAFE achieves its mission through youth leadership development, supporting gay-straight alliances, or GSAs, training educators, advancing educational justice, and deepening racial, gender, trans, and social justice. Welcome, Tyrone.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having us for this conversation.
Thank you both so much for being here. How are each of you doing today, Gia?
The question doesn't get easier to answer, and mainly because I am hesitant to only say I'm doing bad. I do feel blessed to be alive, to have seen my baby today on his way to school. And even as my body is always lately just tense and my muscles are always tense, I feel blessed to have a moment to actually breathe and relax, even as I just remember how, I guess just scary, honestly, this moment is for not only for the people around me, but especially for the young people that I work with on a daily basis. So how I'm doing is really a summary of how my people are doing. And that's struggle busing it through, which isn't new, which is why I still have faith in our people. And, as humans, as people every day, it's a lot to hold in our bodies.
I hear that for sure. Tyrone, how are you doing?
I have to agree with Gia. It's at this time it is a very hard question to answer. I think I'm okay. I think I'm peaceful. And I say that with that I woke up today, got out of bed, big victories for us all these days, had some breakfast, talked to my staff, did some things. It's just taking it day by day. So I think each day I'm just feeling a little different. It depends what's happening in this country, which we know is, America. What more must we say? I'm hanging in there as best I can. And because I have such a supportive team and staff and colleagues, we're hanging in there together, which makes it, I guess it makes it a little more tolerable because we're doing it together, even though tolerable, we shouldn't have to tolerate any of this.
Thank you both so much for joining us today, making the time, making the space. Gia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What life experiences brought you into youth organizing and really just elevating the rights of trans, queer, and two-spirit young people?
So I am one of the co-executive directors for GSA Network, and I've been in that position for, this month is 3 years. I got connected to GSA Network when I was in high school, and that's also where I started my own youth organizing. Just as a trans young girl in high school trying to fill the gap of friendship for not only myself, but the other queers around me in high school. And I hadn't known that GSAs were a one kind of formation that young people created on their own at various schools, but mine in Azusa didn't have one. So it really feels like happen chance. Just the fact that I was like, well, then I might as well start one, and then I might as well research and get the information and make it possible. And it was a resistance, or I don't even know if it was like resistance from my administration or just like not helpfulness. They were just like stalling in the process. And at the time in high school, I was easily agitated. And that just meant that I was like, all right, cool. You want to play around with me and my like 3 years on this campus. So that's when I actually reached out to GSA Network, their local office in Southern California, asked what exactly they know about my legal rights to actually just form a GSA at school. And it was honestly, it was an easy answer. It was like, yeah, the Equal Access Act has already codified like student rights when it comes to actually having extracurricular clubs on their campus, if any of them are allowed, kind of thing, right? So like if your school has a faith-based club, then they can also have a whatever club you kind of assign. I mean, in my case, it was like I just needed a club that actually talked about queerness and what it meant to actually be in a community, not just queer community, but just like be a queer person within the community that I was around. So I got involved and I stayed involved for the last 10 years. And the last 10 years of trans youth organizing, you would think we'd be in a different place because of how much work we have put into to demand respect for our bodies and respect for our lives and respect for our people. And you know what? I do think that we have come a long way, even in this wretched time where trans people are really the talk of the town. And I do think that our ability to still be here, not only as like GSA Network, but also just like the ever-growing numbers of young people who claim their queerness and transness, just our ability to be here, I think I am proud of that so far, right? And I think that really is my goal in this work, just to continue the work of allowing young people to just be here, to just be young people, wherever they call home. And right now, that's a really intense fight.
Thank you, Gia, for that. I've had the pleasure of knowing Gia since she first contacted GSA Network and been able to watch her growth trajectory. And it's been phenomenal and such an honor to see the way that you lead.
Thank you. Thank you both. I didn't know if I could mention it. I was like, I am talking to my predecessor here. And then also like my first co-executive director. Not only does GSA Network itself feel so integral to like my own like personal sense of community and sense of queer network, but I think very much when I look at our work and our impact, having been able to be mentored and then partner, and then now like just build worlds together in this field of justice organizing is part of what keeps me grounded and keeps me able to float along.
Love that. Tyrone, similar questions. We'd love to hear more about your background. What brought you into this work of organizing TQ2S youth, and how has it transformed you?
Yeah, thank you. I got involved in the work. How I started with GSAFE was in 2015. I was asked to do the LTI summer camp that we do, the Leadership Training Institute, by Aaliyah Muldrow. And at first, when she asked me, I was like, I had two main questions were like, is there food? Do I get paid? Yes and yes. I was like, yes, I'm on board. So the LTI camp is a 4-day, 3-night camp. It brings around students from around the state, from different areas of the state of Wisconsin. They have to be in high school, and it teaches them about social justice, consent culture, art. They learn about all the things that they don't get to learn about in school, or they don't get to learn enough about. And they also get to be in a space with like-minded students who also go to high school, who are going through the same exact things that they're going to. They get to be in one big GSA and just feel supported and loved. And after doing that, it was life-changing. I was hooked, and I felt like instantly this was my passion and my calling. Even to the point where then 2 years later, I moved away to Australia and flew back just for the camp. I wouldn't recommend doing that. It's expensive. It is a lot of work, let me tell you. But it was worth it. And I jumped in really realizing that like I didn't have anybody like me growing up as a mentor. Like I didn't, even though we had a GSA, I went to Madison East High School here. That was a very diverse school. Didn't know a lot of queer people or gay people, didn't know we had a GSA, didn't know that was a thing. And also I played soccer. So also trying to be like an out athlete wasn't a thing back in like the early 2000s, right? So trying to navigate that, my own self-identity, then going to college, doing the same thing, playing soccer. And I think it was just realizing that like I could be the voice and I could be the representation that is not woven into schools and that you never see. And also like Black queerness, especially particularly Black queer boys, don't see like me in their space. And I think they need more of that, just like we need to see more trans femme folk in spaces, just like we need to see more trans mask folk in places, just like we need to see more two, like all the things. And I think it was important for me to interject myself into this work. And also, I'm just deeply and utterly disgusted and upset with our education system and the curriculum that we keep forcing down kids' throats, and thinking that we're actually preparing them for life outside of high school, which is not the case at all. They don't even know how to like open a bank account, balance a checkbook. They don't know how to do any of these things that we learned back in middle school. Instead, we're teaching them history that doesn't pertain to kids of color. It only pertains to white kids. And when they teach us about our history, we learn about like, this may be triggering, but like rape, genocide, all the things like hanging, lynchings. And then we learn about the good side of the white people, but they never taught us anything about what I, as a Black kid then, still figuring out if I was gay and stepping into like also Black gayness. So I think ultimately, without realizing, I was always destined for this work because I grew up in this education system and I struggled a lot. I have ADHD. I struggled with comprehension, dyslexia, and had to like work hard to get through school. And I had to do it a lot on my own because, again, when you have disabilities, they throw you in special ed classes and think like that's the solution without actually explaining to you as a kid like why you're going through these processes is damaging. And it doesn't make you trust the education system regardless. So I think realizing that like, A, our education system is terrible on so many different levels, and B, like there needs to be adults like us going into schools and talking to parents and also school board members who are, again, Mom for Liberties, all those terrible people that say that they are for parental rights, but really they're only for the rights of kids and parents that identify with their own ideals. And I have no problem being that person and going to them and letting these people know the tea and reading the Miranda rights and all the things because it needs to be done. And so as ultimately, it just felt like a calling. Once I stepped into it, I just kept going.
Thank you both for sharing. You both bring just such rich life experience into this critical work that you're doing. And this moment is asking all of us for more, right? So Gia, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with GSA clubs? What's happening with GSA clubs around the country? And you touched on this a little bit before, but how were GSA clubs allowed to exist? And what are you seeing now in terms of their ability to stay in existence?
Mm-hmm. To Tyrone's point around the state of public education, I think it's important in our assessment as GSA Network, it's important to start there and understand our assignment has been to create pockets of life in a system that is very much not trying to promote or teach life. Like the history of public education in America, at least, right, coming from just a system of like child removal and child like assimilation or like assimilation, right? It's like there's so much stripping away of our babies throughout history that still happens. So when it comes to GSAs nowadays, it is both empowering and inspiring that GSAs in all their formations and all their ever-changing names continue to self-organize. Like young people by nature are going to congregate. Young people by nature are going to support their friends. And young people by nature are going to assert their self-determination, which is why that's a core belief, right? It's like we know for a fact that trans, queer, two-spirit youth exists, they belong, and they have a right to self-determination. We also know that the school system is not set up to respect those things. So the importance of GSAs is ever more increasing. The creativity that we're seeing from our base and how to actually create a relevant and safe and emerging space for their friends on their campus, in their city, in that specific condition. The creativity we're seeing is incredible and also, I think, reflective of the creativity that students across history, again, have always shown when we repress them and when we say, all right, we're going to teach you about freedom and we're going to not actually let you live it. We're going to have to see what happens in that contradiction. And in particular, we're seeing that contradiction happen in Texas, the first state to quote unquote officially outlaw GSA clubs. That was, of course, a package deal where they outlawed any kind of public institutional support or encouragement of, again, essentially affirming young people in their full selves. So what does that mean for GSAs in Texas and then any other state or area that is pressuring them to not exist? That means, for one, making sure that the infrastructure that the queer community and honestly, like just the people-oriented communities have built over the last few decades, make sure that they show up for trans youth and GSA clubs as a whole. So that's That includes us and our partners like Translaw Center and ACLU of Texas, the Transgender Education Network of Texas, Students Engaged to Advance Texas, like all these organizations coming together to actually sue the state and be like, hey, you can just walk all over our fundamental constitutional and human rights, but expect us to do something. Expect us to say that not only do we exist, right? Not only do trans, queer, two-spirit youth exist, not only do we belong, right? They call Texas home, so that's their home. But like we know self-determination will be practiced. And going back to Tyrone's point, and I'll end here, like the state of education does not set people up to practice their self-determination. We don't set American kids up to actually be part of a democracy. And that explains why it's so easy to actually then remove our roles in that democracy. And we don't even know what the system can be doing. So I have to say, it's a precarious time, and the kids are going to be all right if we do our best to show up for them and trust them.
Yeah, for sure. So just to clarify, Gia, you've been talking about Senate Bill 12 in Texas, which is a law that bans programs and discussions relating to race, gender identity, and sexual orientation in all public and charter schools in Texas from pre-kindergarten through 12th grade. And so that it eliminates a wide range of activities that foster inclusion and promote equal opportunity, including events celebrating Black, Latina, Asian, Indigenous history, trainings on cultural awareness and inclusion, and critical conversations between students, parents, and educators about topics relating to race, gender identity, and sexual orientation. You mentioned your collaboration with Transgender Law Center and ACLU of Texas. What are you all doing to fight back against this law in Texas?
So first and foremost, we've filed a declaration and are working to get an injunction through the court. Just like reflecting back that what the law actually does is pull back on young people's freedom of speech and freedom of assembly in particular. So that's where we start, right? Actually trying to mitigate how much actual judicial harm and legislative harm is done. And at the same time, we know that the court system takes its time. And in that time, under the current policy, young people are actively being discouraged or just really uncertain of what organizing or what actually like, again, be just gathering with their friends, supporting their friends and acting with their friends. But I do want to say something around like this situation is kind of chilling our ability to support clubs nationwide because we are a national organization and we do our best to make sure our curriculum and our opportunities are available to young people, regardless of where they're at, when certain localities actually outlaw, like the disbursement of information, which is what's happening here. That just means that it gets really hard to actually resource young people and put resources just in front of them. And we're seeing that not only in our work in Texas, but slowly everywhere, especially as we step in to defend our GSA clubs.
Tyrone, GSAFE is not a stranger to using litigation to defend the rights of trans, queer, and two-spirit young people. I know GSAFE joined a lawsuit against the Office of Civil Rights in regards to Title IX violations and really trying to protect the rights of trans, queer, and two-spirit youth in Wisconsin. Can you tell us more about what young people in Wisconsin are facing and how GSAFE is supporting them?
Oh yeah, I would just say that in Wisconsin, I feel it's a little different, and I'll say because of our current governor, Tony has vetoed so many anti-trans bills in his stint of being our governor that I would jump forward and say that next year is our governor race, and it's very unnerving here, I'll say, because we're not sure how it's going to go. But I think that students here are, and kids love to protest here. I mean, our state capital is here, so where there's always a protest somewhere left and right, students are noticing what's happening. They're noticing that adults are continuing to fail them. They're questioning why adults are continuing to fail them, and they're terrified. I mean, at the end of the day, we're stripping away rights and acting like it's just the normal thing that we're expressing. I think that they don't know who to turn to. I think that they don't know who to trust in their schools, and I think that they're just they're scared because at the end of the day, there already isn't there is a protection for them, but now what's happening in our country, there really feels like that they just don't feel protected in schools. And Gia, I think also its name that I've been reading is that like with GSAs now that there's some governors that are demanding that turning points are put into schools as a counter to GSAs, which is absolutely disgusting and appalling. And that's what's going to make it worse. Like having it's like we already know that administrations will try to get rid of GSAs by getting rid of other clubs to therefore affect that GSA somewhere down the line to wipe it out.
Mm-hmm. And that means that like if we allow the GSAs to be banned, that means any extracurricular club, and not only the ones that support like actually and teach young people about their histories and communities, but also just like their hobbies and like chess club, Harry Potter club.
Yeah, it's wild what they would do to like make kids feel alienated in their own spaces. So I think what we're noticing is just the students are fearful and they're turning to us. And what we're trying to do is we provide resources. In GSAFE, we have 7 staff, and each staff is essentially a director of our own department. We have a staff of like youth programming, family engagement, advocacy, and policy. And our family engagement and youth programming have really been working together to bring the resources and everyone together. So yeah, with the Title IX thing, we filed 9 federal complaints against school districts who refused to implement Title IX. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, Title IX, essentially, to put it in terms, means you can't discriminate based on sex or gender in classrooms, which they're doing that through school boards. This is how they're attacking students and their education and families is going through the school board. And essentially, we had enough of it. We had parents, we had administrators, teachers, whatever, reach out to us and let us know what was happening. We partnered with Fair Wisconsin to do this, and we partnered with GLSEN, and we essentially just started writing complaints that were getting looked at, and we were getting responses until, the presidency happened and they all got wiped away. But the point of that was also to let people know that we're watching, even as a small org that's been around for 34 years. We weren't just going to sit by and continue to let our students be attacked and their families. And the way that they're going about doing this essentially is like Moms for Liberty, which is a main chapter, and a hate group, let's just be clear about that too, that are trying to infect school boards and be on them, right? And they're trying to control that by essentially having a very conservative board and say that there can be no bathrooms. They're trying to censor curriculum, which is insane because it already feels restricted enough. And they're essentially just trying to make school systems feel more like a prison, which they already do anyways. They're in a building where they have to ask people when they can go to the bathroom, when they can eat, they get fresh air, they have to walk a straight line. Like all these things that prisons do implement, we do them in school systems just with a smile and maybe a decent lunch. Again, for me specifically, I've shifted from like programmatic work to like dealing with crappy parents and crappy adults as the executive director because of the fact that like now I deal directly more with like school boards and more like MSD and more like school districts who are reaching out and have all these questions and all these things. Like I have to speak a certain word to these adults. But essentially, it's just like people know that we're not going to go quiet. We have been here. We will always be here, as we all keep saying. And for that fact, we're like, well, I'm not sure why you all keep doing this because we're not going to go anywhere. And that's the message we keep trying to relate to our kids.
And now our role as adults, as older people in society, is to be like eye to eye with the young people who we were used to be young with and be like, we can't mess over the next generation. No matter how mad people who have already experienced the public education system are of what they didn't get, because we deserved way better, right? No matter how mad we are, that can't stop us from actually making sure that the next generation is getting what they need. Especially if we want them to take care of us when we're needing care ourselves, right? And that piece around like intergenerational community building, I don't think is taught well in America, which is why we're so clueless as to how actually to respond. Like schools are bad, the government's bad. Does that mean it's over, right? But no, like there's so many ways that we can, like the idea of a lost generation doesn't have to be the case, right? If we actually catch them. There's so many adults in our networks that are ready to catch our young people. But I very much believe that most parents of queer young people are not only good parents, are not only loving parents, but I also think that they're like actually trying to like figure out how to maintain their home and maintain their children. And in this kind of economy, everything feels like a threat to the family's stability and sustainability, which means if your kid is telling you that he's having trouble in school and also queer, it's like you start worrying about their future in a way that makes you scared to not only love your child. I mean, you fear loving your child because then you also fear the economic impacts on your family, right? Whereas what we're trying to say is actually, no, loving your kids, supporting our kids, raising them in their fullness, it is such a good economical strategy because then people are raised with like their skills actually refined, right? And their basic needs met, but also like they can make a living because they're using something creative and like they're truly actually passionate about, which is another reason why I think people really don't enjoy school because we're just not encouraged to actually find what we're passionate about.
And you chose to have that kid. Since this country is very against abortions, you chose to have this child that now didn't turn out to what you thought it should be. How are they identifying? And now you want to ostracize them and do all the, okay. But I mean, that's what America does. And also to the point of like, going back to what I was talking about, Title IX stuff, it's like, again, when we talk about parental rights, you do not get to sit there and say that you are for parental rights when you are okay harming other people's kids. In just the same way, you do not get to sit there and say that you get to support nonprofit work and the work that we do if you're pulling our funding. You don't get to say these things because at the end of the day, you're pulling the thing that we need to do the thing for our kids. And then also, like, you don't get to sit out of school boards. You don't get to be in these meetings and tell other parents that their kids don't have a right to use a bathroom, to learn specific things. Because I'm going to keep repeating because it's just ridiculous. It's almost like conservatives that join school boards is because they're trying to, I'm going to say, groom the next army of conservatives to therefore take their place, because this is exactly what's happening. A key example, we know it's going to happen with Charlie Kirk's children. That is what's going to happen. That is what happens in this country. And I think that, like, truthfully, I just think parents just like bullying kids for some reason. It's really weird, but that's what they do. And that's just what it feels like. And that's what the kids feel too.
You've both touched on, organizing is a long game. Organizing is a movement, not a moment. We've been here before. We know what we need to do. And I think it's really easy for us to talk about things in response to what's happening. But if we look at what are the dreams and visions of trans and queer young people, what are we fighting for? What does liberation in our lifetime look like? How are your organizations supporting TQ2S young people and finding that joy and resilience under this really horrendous authoritarian regime that is just unfolding in front of us?
I'll start, like, when we tried with finding joyful things, it's like we're putting on like a little Halloween dance costume party for our community, for our, you know what I mean? It's doing things like that don't have to be around us talking about politics or about what's happening in this country regardless. It's just about being in each other's company and actually building community, because I think it's a big thing too that we're missing. What's happening now is everyone's talking about community, but it doesn't feel like actually people, like, orgs are doing communal things together. We're just like throwing the word out, like everyone was throwing out DEI, but people were actually practicing DEI. It was just some fad all of a sudden. I think that it's just and showing up wherever we can. So if that's showing up to pride events, showing up to schools, showing up to whatever weekend, whatever events, to just table and just let our community know that we are there, even if it's not our LGBT community. I think it's, again, we talk about representation and visualization. Being in a space that may be predominantly cis as queer folk can be extremely powerful and dangerous and scary, as we all know. But I think that as adults, we take that on because we know that, like, being that student that doesn't see us, what that could mean for them and how that feels, not knowing that, like, you have that representation and support. So I think it's really just letting even our families and just opening up as we essentially open up our office, open up our home. You stop by, let's share some coffee together. Let's talk about things. We're putting together transparent groups that meet monthly that also involve the kids being there. So we're trying to do everything we can in our community to make sure to get everyone in physical spaces we want our community to really start learning how to defend themselves, is what I'm trying to get at. And this is one of the ways that we do that, because we're a place that holds the resources and the things, but they also need to know how and what to do. Because we're hearing parents and people say, like, they don't know what to do these days. And that's just not, I just can't accept that anymore. That's just not an excuse. We walk around with handheld computers 24/7. There's no reason you just can't look something up or ask somebody. As scary as hard as it may be for you, think about your kids. So I think, again, it's just showing up in representation and just spreading the knowledge. And offer resources. We never tell anybody what they should be doing. We, like, here's a suggestion, here's what we know, blah, blah, blah. We're not grooming anybody. We're just trying to help people. We're only helping them with how they're asking us to help them.
Gia, what is GSA Network doing?
So one fun kind of evolution of our national gathering this past year was the fact that we invited parents to attend with their young people. That was partly a security measure, right? As our folks are traveling around the country, we want to make sure that we are not moving alone and we're living with people who we trust. And also that was like a political decision around, like, we know that parents are one of the strongest advocates when they have the information and they have the backing to actually defend their kid. So bring them into the conversation kind of moment. And this summer, what we got to experience was that building of understanding and compassion and, like, solidarity in real time. And simply only by making sure people were in the room, like making sure parents were actually there along with their kids. Because oftentimes the idea is that like queer kids are trying to kind of like get political and get active and kind of be removed from their community. But again, I don't think that's the case. I think that a lot of times our call to social justice is actually a call back to our home or back to like our place of belonging. So having parents and youth in the same space at a national level in Little Rock, Arkansas it was a party. It was great. And I think that is another way that we are making sure that even as like the world ends in the way that we know it, that what is coming out of it, what is going to be rebirthed, will be something more beautiful than what was here before. And the only way that we can guarantee that is literally supporting the creativity and supporting like the information kids have in their heads, so that when they experience real life issues and real life positions where they can actually make a change, they're making literally beautiful changes or beautiful choices. I don't think I'm over exaggerating that like with the fall of democracy comes also the rise of really ugly designs. We're seeing not only our cities gentrified, but they're ugly. Like, right? Like it's like bad design means something. And I only say this because I really do think this next generation will take on the mantle of whatever democracy looks like for the next 50, 60 years. And I pray every day that I have done enough, and I do it more every day, but I pray that I have done enough to make sure that they know that there's more option than just what they're seeing around them. In their local environment, at the national environment, there are more ways that we can live and sustain this world and be in right relationship with the people around us, the animals around us, the land around us. There's more ways than just what we're seeing. To Tyrone's point, it's very easy for adults in the communities to become cynics and to become just over it and not even trying, which is valid until there's a kid in the room and you're like, are we just gonna not try in front of them? No, right? So trying together, I think, actually does cultivate community, fun, and possibilities.
So I also name real quick, and something that we like going to when we have anti-trans bills is going to sit at the Capitol from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and giving testimony is another way that like we have interjected to show up. And a lot of other nonprofits have done that around here too. It's, stronger numbers kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Go to the meetings, like getting parents to go to board meetings, eventually run for school board meetings. But
that too, and I think that's what we need to shift it, is to get people to start running for school board instead of sitting in the crowd. Like they need to be on the school board to make the change.
I mean, that's why there was an opening for your job, right, Tyrone? Is Ali went and joined the Madison School Board.
No, Ali actually was already on the school board, and she was the president. She's working with Abortion Funds Wisconsin. She got hired on to be their first ED.
Great. Gia, to your point about creativity, I know GSA Network and the Gender Justice Leadership Program and the Two Spirit Initiative have put out just really beautiful zines. And so I would love to hear more about like how you got young people involved in that and in that space to make that happen.
This is an exciting year because we are actually at our 10-year milestone marker for a lot of our trans youth organizing work at GSA Network. And what I mean by that is like 10 years of intentionally resourcing experiments. Because once again, I think that trans young people are, especially back when I was in high school, we were taught or trained that we were going to make it, that we were going to actually live, right? So again, like the creativity, which is not even a question, we had nowhere to practice that. So when I was brought on in 2015 to start to form our trans youth organizing work, I knew that eventually we wanted to get to a place of political education and political advocacy and like really participating in democracy, right? We wanted to get it there. And very quickly that I know, not only from my experience, but in the work of inviting my friends into that work, I knew it had to be interesting, right? Tony Cade Bombera says that the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And I mean, I think even physics backs that up in terms of like, and now that I raised a teenager, very much do I understand, what my goal for this kid is, that has to be interesting. If it's not interesting, he's gonna go the other way. So all that to say, we threw everything on the wall and install was stuck. And young people love artistic projects like scene making. Young people love like a little bit of a prompt and then permission to just kind of like go wild with it. And what has come out of the last 10 years of this like radical permission to trans young people is a bunch of, to your point, beautiful zines, like amazing deep conversations that were documented and archived as podcast. We have a bunch of various like visual video like productions that have come out of it, that range from like animations to also to the more concentrated like response to these legislative attacks on our communities. The latest and biggest one being getting young people's stories to the Supreme Court. Even when their decision at the Supreme Court doesn't rule in favor of the existence and the rights of trans young people, we did our due diligence, and we're going to continue to do our due diligence of really uplifting the actual lives of trans young people in their creative and authentic ways. And we're going to make sure that people see that and hear that, because trans people are not going anywhere.
I mean, let the record reflect that we were here.
Exactly.
Amazing. There's so much that we could keep talking about, but time in these moments is a finite resource sometimes. So what does it mean for our communities to take action and be in solidarity with GSA Network, with GSAFE, with TQ2S young people? What is your call to action for the folks who are listening today?
Show up. It's pretty simple. Show up. And I think that the people need to understand the difference between like active ally and just like ally. Sitting behind a TV and going like, oh, that looks terrible for a call is not an ally. Being out there with us on the forefront, donate. If you can't donate money, donate time. Handing out doing anything you can and such that like that's active allies. Calling out your friends when they're saying crappy things. That is active allyship. And I think that ultimately that's what we need people to show up. We need to be a unified thing if we're going to get, and we're going to get through this, but like if we're really going to succeed into this, we need to come together as a community and understand what that means and move forward and actually have a plan moving forward too. It feels like when we have movements, we have them and then they kind of fizzle off. And I think that's a problem, is like we need to continuously stay strong, especially through these 4 years. Because if we don't, we already see what's happening. It's just going to continue to get worse. I would say have the hard conversations. Have conversations with your kids. If there's like an election going on, talk to your kids about what's happening in that election. For us here, it's like talking to the kids about the possibility Tony not running for governor, what that means. Before Trump was elected, talk to your kids about what that could have meant, what it would have meant if he won. But at that point, if he would have won, it's like having these really hard things that you have to converse about. And also find joy. Like stop doom scrolling, stop being so involved in all the things that are happening in this country recently. I think like everyone needs to disconnect from technology. I wouldn't give up my childhood for anything. You couldn't tell me nothing. Being outside, playing with my friends, getting dirty and scraped up. I would keep that versus now where kids are technology babies. It's kind of sad to watch, but take a break from technology. Go enjoy some fresh air. Do something. Find joy in the day, because even though that these days are extremely hard, there are joys weaved throughout all of this. You just have to want to find them and hold on to them, because we're going to see this stuff every day. But again, you have the choice to disconnect from it.
Touch grass. Yeah.
No, really, touch grass. I have to second what Tyrone just shared. What came to my mind was the same call to action that we've been saying for the last 10 years, which is like show up for trans youth. And now it's really like show up for trans queer two-spirit youth. And now it's like show up for every young person and the future young people, because they're trying to demolish our future kind of thing. And there are so many ways that people can show up for young people. First and foremost, there are probably GSAs right around you, meaning there are like local ways that people can actually resource and contribute to just the overall high school experience of queer young people in their area. That looks like volunteering. To Tyrone's point, it's like time, talent, or tithe, right? Let's like give us a little bit of time, give us a little bit of your skill, give us a little bit of your resource, right? And once again, it's like not only is this the call to action for people who are in positions of power, who are in positions of like more resource or stability, but that sets a good model to our young people of how we should be moving through the world. We should always be actually figuring out how we can contribute and use our talents to give forward, to actually contribute to the world around us. And I do think that's where the joy comes from. Like we create the joy when you create beautiful things. You create the joy when you hold beautiful moments.
Thank you for that. As we wrap up, our sister Asada said, it is our duty to fight for freedom, and it's our duty to win. And you both you as people and your organizations are doing so much to support TQ2S young people to be their full, authentic, brilliant, creative, wonderful selves. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for sharing your brilliance with us. And keep fighting.
Thank you. And thank you, CJSF, for holding the conversation. We need everyone to actually figure out how they're backing the next generation, and CJSF is consistently doing that. So thank you all.
I agree, Gia. People need to pull their head deep out of the crevice and start doing things, because we need action to get through this.
That was Gia Juniper Loving from GSA Network and Tyrone Creech from GSAFE, who highlighted a vital truth. All youth need spaces to gather with people like them to overcome isolation and build a healthy identity. Yet, most school curriculums fail to include the inspiring stories of queer, Black, Indigenous, and Brown leaders in their communities, leaving a huge gap in the positive development of millions of youth in schools. This gap is further weaponized, fueling a dangerous debate where one group's so-called parental rights encroach on the human rights of all students. This is a battle we see between school boards taken over by groups like Moms for Liberty. How do we fight back this narrowing of who is an American and who is deserving of civil rights and protection under the law? The organizing and impact litigation GSA is leading with Transgender Law Center in Texas reminds us that we must protect the right to free speech and freedom of assembly of all special identity groups. The fight is for equitable protection for all. That's why organizing is so essential. Groups like GSA create pockets of life, spaces where queer youth can affirm their right to exist and exercise self-determination. These are also spaces to educate and support the cultural and political development of their parents and caregivers, of their educators and allies. Supporting this work isn't just about solidarity. It's about cultural transformation and building intergenerational connections that keep us all safe. As Tyrone urged, touch grass and show up, Gia also called all of us back home to a place of belonging and dignity. Tyrone and Gia invite us to do our part and show up for queer youth, as this is how we defend democracy and seed a future where all have a loving place. Please find and support a GSA club or donate to GSAFE. For funders, resource the critical leadership of queer youth, whose fight for civil and human rights is the front line of defense for all young people. Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with a young person you love, an educator, caregiver, system leader, or funder. Our podcast is made possible by CJSF donors and organizers, and our brilliant producer, Phil Circus. To support education justice organizers around the country, please donate at cjsfund.org, cjsfund.org. Onwards to power. Thank you.